Level up with the new AAA Commanders MVP membership. Get all the benefits of AAA plus exclusive experiences, discounts, and tickets. Already a AAA member? Upgrade for free or join today at AAA.com/Commanders. Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. So in a minute, I'll be joined by Commanders analyst Logan Paulsen. Of course, played for the Redskins for a number of years. Always enjoyed talking to him. Always good stuff to talk about. Talk about a few things I'm going to get to. Before I get to my topics with Logan, I did want to get in a couple of things from today. I was out at the Harvest Feast with to cover the Commanders, what they're doing, giving away free food for Thanksgiving. Of course, Jayden Daniels was out there, so I want to get a chance to talk to him. And basically, folks, you know this. He wants to play. He's going to be back out there at some point. He is not focused on, what the record is or anything like that. His desire is to play. Their desire is to see him play. At some point, it's going to happen that he will be back on the field, regardless of the record. Now, of course, if there's only a couple games left, I don't know. But right now, it seems like the plan is trending toward certainly not Sunday against Denver. It could be Minnesota the following week, or perhaps at the latest New York in a couple weeks. I think there's still more to learn about not learn about his situation, but more to see how he progresses with this situation. He is throwing. When we were at the Harvest Feast, there was no brace. People wondering. I also didn't see him handing the bags with the left hand when he was doing it, but he is throwing. He started throwing again last week, so that's what I understand. So anyway, and again, his desire is to play. And I know people are going to say, well, what else is he going to say? I agree. I expected him to say that. Of course he wants to play. If a player says he doesn't want to play, that is a problem. That's a bigger story. But I do think I think it's more, you're trying to get a sense of when maybe it is. Jayden is really good at not really divulging a whole lot, and I give him credit for that. So he's very disciplined with all that, and he doesn't, that's fine. I respect that. So anyway, but he, that's what I say. And I know he does not subscribe to the put me in bubble wrap theory that a lot of people seem to have. Logan and I get into all that and why it's important for him to get back out there, but also why it's important for this team to finish strong. Because I think there's a lot, when you're bringing back the same coach, you don't want to go 3-14, 4-13, or whatever it is, whatever it might be, because it puts you in a really bad spot to go into next year. And what does it do to the confidence and belief in the coaching staff if you get some guys back and you still can't win games? What does that do? So I think you have to look bigger picture with this, other than just, it's a number 7 draft pick. Fine. But if they get some of these offensive pieces back and they still can't win and they don't look better, what does that say? It adds a whole layer of questions in the offseason other than just who might they draft. So something to consider, something that Logan and I get into, and something I'll probably get into more of down the road for sure. So a couple other things before I get to Logan. Commanders fans, your fandom just got an upgrade. Introducing the AAA Commanders MVP membership, where real fans get real perks and the same trusted AAA membership benefits. The new AAA Commanders membership provides the chance to win game tickets, access to VIP events and experiences, 15% off at the Commanders Online Pro Shop, while providing peace of mind for Commanders fans on the road. Already a AAA member? Don't sit on the sideline. Upgrade your membership or join today at AAA.com/Commanders. First, it's funny because during these weeks, I always had to end up working on Thanksgiving pretty much, at least for part of the day. Sometimes you're away from your family, having to go to Dallas to cover a game. Never fun to be away from your family. So you people serving overseas who are listening to this, shout out to you, because the one thing I always remember, yes, I have to work on Christmas. I don't like that. And then you remember, hey, for me, it's one day. For people serving overseas, it could be 6 months, 8 months, 18 months, whatever it is. So appreciate that. Anybody having to do that. So just a shout out to you. So that's one thing. And for you club members, no private Zooms this week, because I do have family in town and kids are in town and want to spend some time with them. So I'll get back to those next week, but I will be doing the private Zoom the private chat before the game on Sunday, probably about 3 hours before kickoff or so. But we'll put out the link for that for all the club members, and for you gold members, we'll get back to the private stuff next week. So just wanted to pass that along. And again, shout out, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Appreciate you listening. I'm very thankful for people who are sticking around. I know how hard this season is because I'm in the middle of it. So I know how difficult it is for you, and for you still tuning in. Really appreciate it. So anyway, folks, that's enough for me. Here's my conversation with former Washington Redskin tight end turned Commanders analyst, Logan Paulson. Hail Nation, take your fandom up a notch. Check out the new AAA Commanders MVP membership. You'll get all the reliable AAA benefits like 24/7 roadside assistance, plus exciting Hail Nation extras like opportunities to win game tickets, attend exclusive events, and 15% off the online pro shop. Already a AAA member? No problem. You can upgrade for free. Head to AAA.com/Commanders to upgrade or join today and become a true Commanders MVP and Hail Nation member. Okay, Logan, let's start philosophically, because I love talking about philosophy stuff. I know the big question is about Jayden Daniels, when he should come back, if he should come back. First of all, there's debate, right? I don't think internally there's a debate, but outside there, and Louis Riddick came out and said he would not play Joe Burrow because of they're in the same situation as Washington. Would you bring him back? What's the value of bringing him back?
Yeah, I think I for sure would bring him back. Obviously I say for sure, but I think depending on the level of injury, depending on how many games are left, I think that's all context and important information to keep in mind. For me, I think about a young football player, and the best way to encourage growth is to get reps in the field, right? And I was talking to someone today, and they were like, well, doesn't it remind you a little bit of RG3? And it's not really. Like, it's a different injury, it's a different type of injury history, it's a different play style, it's all these different things. And again, I don't think you can apply RG3's experience to Jayden Daniels. And so, like, for me, it's about what is best for Jayden's development long term. And to me, like, I know you want to kind of put him in bubble wrap and make sure he never gets hurt. And I understand that I don't want anybody to get hurt, but this is a violent game, right? And so people are going to get hurt. That stuff happens. So I need to make sure that I'm getting him as many reps and as many looks as I can on the field. I think you remember last year, New England Patriots with Drake May, like, even though they had a starting quarterback, Drake May was getting about half the reps because they were worried about his long-term development. And I think that's what you're looking at here. You want him to get opportunities against NFL defenses to find the rhythm, adjust to the speed, and kind of learn what he can and can't get away with. And so to me, those reps long term are going to be very, very important for a young quarterback. And again, I understand people wanting to protect them, but you can't protect them in this game, really. You know what I'm saying? You can't protect them. It's a violent sport. It's physical, and you can manage risk, but you can't mitigate risk. And I think that's something that is important to keep in mind with the decision regarding Jayden Daniels.
And I wholeheartedly agree with that. I also am curious. I'm going to get a couple things with play calling with it. But if you're another player in the locker room, let's say they wanted to shut him down. He's like, hey, we know he's healthy. He knows he's healthy. But we're going to shut him down anyways. And then player X over here is like, wait a minute, I'm playing with all these issues and I'm still out there. Would that rub anybody the wrong way? Not so much Jayden rubbing people the wrong way, but the decision how would that impact others? Would it at all?
I mean, if he's perfectly healthy, is that kind of what you're saying? Like,
if he's healthy and they say, you know what, we 5 games left, we know you're healthy, but we're not going to play you.
Yeah, I definitely think that would rub some people the wrong way because, again, like, your body is your industry. And so you're basically, as an organization, acknowledging that these games are meaningless, and we're going to demand that you play in a meaningless football game and expose yourself to injury, expose yourself to a long rehab process this offseason because we don't value you the same way we value Jayden Daniels. And that's true for a lot of people. Like, I had to play a lot of late preseason games. I had to play a lot of late season games where we're out of it because I was like a fringe roster guy, and that's what I had to do to be in the league. But there are some guys who are starting caliber players who have to play in those games, and they're pouring it out for the organization. They're pouring it out for the team. So I do think it sets kind of an unusual precedent, if you will, to kind of say, hey, these people aren't going to play. These people are going to play because you can't do it with everybody. That's just the way the roster is constructed in the NFL. And so I do think it could potentially bother some people. So I do think it's something that needs to be considered when making this decision.
And then looking at this, because the other thing is draft pick versus strong finish. I say because this coaching staff, like the head coach, these guys are coming back. I don't know how many of the coaching staff will be back because other opportunities, whatever. How important is it to have a strong finish versus that high draft pick?
I think it's kind of like proving to yourself, like I think as an analyst and a fan of this team and thinking about my own experiences, like sometimes you just want to know, like, where we lying to ourselves this whole time. And I think if you were to have a strong finish here, win 4-6 or 5-6, like that would be a really big declarative statement saying like this wasn't 2024 wasn't the fluke, right? Like this is who we are as an organization. This is who we are as a team. It just was a little bit of bad injury luck, a little bit of serendipity here and there, and we kind of got the bad end and some variance, and now all of a sudden like this is who we are. So I think in terms of building confidence and kind of making sure the direction is correct in terms of North Star, we're going in the right direction type of deal, I think a strong finish is going to be really, really important. So I would kind of lean in that direction. Obviously, you want good football players, and draft capital is really important for building an organization and building a team. But I think the psychology of the organization is just as important, if not more important. You got to get that thing, the locker room, believing again that they are a contender and they're a winner, especially when Jayden Daniels in the lineup. So I think getting all those things pointed in the right, like think about it as a fan, how you would feel is if you won 5 of the next 6 games, you'd be really optimistic about next year, and you'd be really excited about next year. I think it's the same thing for the locker room.
I also wonder, Logan, too, like if let's say they go 4-13, and or 3-14 would be worst case for the organization. Let's say it's 4-13, they win in that range. That also puts a different level of you're under the microscope a lot more going next year. And is it now people coaching for their futures versus, like, okay, you've got the right people, you've got this in place. Like, yeah, you didn't have the year you wanted because of the injuries, but you got these other stuff in place that you saw can correct this. So, you know what I'm saying? Like to me, it would lead to a lot more questions other than, oh, who are you going to pick at number 6?
Yeah, I definitely think it kind of leads to like, do you still have the team? Do you still have the locker room? Do guys believe in what you're saying and the messaging? And I think that's always something you're negotiating. And right, wrong, or indifferent, like I think that's something that's a little bit problematic about the coaching cycle anyway. It's like you get 3 years and either you did or you didn't. And I don't think that's always fair given the situation that they're coming into. But I do think it would kind of, again, it would support the fact that I believe, and that Dan Quinn is the guy here. He's the right guy, and it would show ownership. It would show the fan base that, yeah, like even though this was a tumultuous start because of the injuries and some other adversity they faced early in the season, like this is still the right guy to helm the ship. This is still the right offensive coordinator. These are still the right position coaches in certain situations. So that's something I would say, yeah, like the psychology is important. The logistics of perspective is also important here, and I think all those things to me are things that inform you wanting to finish strong here in the back half of the season.
And I also wonder too, like if you're a player in the locker room and you have let's say it just bottoms out, but like let's say Jayden comes back, Terry's back, and you still can't win, do they start to question if things are going, you know what I mean? And how much does that matter when what does it take for players to start questioning it, and how much does that factor in too?
I mean, I think it's a huge, because again, like it goes back to the thing, like, do you have the locker room? And I know that's a weird, very subjective kind of soft thing that doesn't show up in analytics, but you watch it every week. Do you have the locker room? Yes or no? Do guys believe in what you're doing? Yes or no? And if there is doubt, you have a bad football team. You need a confident football team that believes in themselves, believes in the direction. And that, I think, is the first step in developing a good organization, right? Like you hear all these crazy statistics about Kansas City, like how they haven't been less than a 10-win team since Mahomes became the starter or whatever it is, right? Like that's not just because of Patrick Mahomes. He's a big part of that, but everybody in that building believes that they can win any single game they're a part of. And building that culture here is extremely important. Like I think another example is like the Detroit Lions. They started off rough, kind of a rocky, tumultuous start to Dan Campbell's tenure. But now I think when you look at them, that's a team that believes they're a top 5, top 10 team in the NFL every single week that they're playing. And so when you look at that, you say to yourself, like, how do we build that? And that confidence comes from the coaching staff, that comes from ownership, that comes from the locker room, that comes from individual players, and that comes from winning. So let's start winning some football games and be competitive and get after it back half of the season here. I think that's what we're trying to establish. We're not trying to establish necessarily the best chance of winning a Super Bowl in 2026. We're trying to establish a dynasty. And if the foundation here over these next couple of years is correct, then that'll come, I think.
Do you see enough of the foundation yet?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think after last year, there were some questions that I was hoping would be answered this year. And I think this year has opened up some new questions. I think there are times and spurts where you say, man, like that's that's more where I thought this team was after the 2024 season. I look at some defensive performances this year, like the LA Chargers game, the game against Miami, where you're like, okay, that's a competitive, tough, smart football team that's heading in the right direction. But there's a lot of other data points that show the opposite. So I think that's another thing that's important for me. And in terms of building confidence, like in myself, but in the grand scheme of things, probably not that important. It's just like, is this a real thing? Like, can they play consistent football? Can they start turning the football over? Can they do some of the things that they said at the beginning of the year that they were going to be able to do? And I think, again, that's where winning in the back half becomes important. Offensively, can we see the best versions of Jayden Daniels, the one we saw against the New York Giants, the one we saw against Chicago, minus the turnovers, like where we see this dynamic playmaker that could elevate a roster. And again, it's been really hard for him. Injuries at the receiver position, injuries to himself. So all of those things, in terms of answering your original question, I think are still in flux with me. But again, with the back six here, if you play them well and you play competitive, then I think it assuages a lot of the doubt that you may have. And I think that's another reason why it's important to treat this back half like it's a really important part of the season.
Yeah, and that, because like I look at it, like at least coming out of this year, I think you have the offensive line, you obviously have the quarterback, you have other parts, but I'm like defensively, I don't know that I see enough of the building blocks just yet.
I think that's a fair assessment. I think when the defense has played the way they've played the last couple of weeks, I think it opens up a lot of questions. But I also look at, guys like Mikey, guys like Quan, I'll put him in there, guys like Jordan McGee, young pieces that maybe didn't play the best versions of themselves this year in the context of a defense that was struggling. But I think when you look at them individually, you look at the athletes, you look at the football IQ in certain instances, and you say, those are some pieces that you could be excited about. Trey Amos is another one that is very exciting. Kinlaw, I think, has been impressive the last couple of weeks and feels like a piece you can build around. So while the result and product on the field, I agree with you, it leaves a lot to be desired. I think if you could create a better ecosystem, I think those pieces will start to flourish. It's kind of like trying to grow a plant and you got all that trash in there and you don't really water, you're not taking care of it. Nothing's going to look good. But the second you give it a little TLC and you put those guys in a little bit position to be successful, I think you start to see better production. And I think if Miami is a building block and it's something that you can kind of build off for the last 6 games of the season, I think those guys we just talked about, Quan, Mikey, obviously Trey Amos is hurt, but Kinlaw, McGee will get more opportunities and start to blossom a little bit, which is kind of ultimately what I'm hoping for. And why this, to me, again, these last 6 games are so important.
And the first person I thought about when you talk about the plant and all that was Emmanuel Forbes.
Yeah.
You put him in a situation where you have a really good defense. You watch that guy, he's playing with a confidence that we did not see here. But I think that's a guy it's why you have to be patient sometimes.
And just to piggyback on that, I think it's funny, I had to do something for Take Command podcast with Grant where it was like, where's Mikey at? And I think you see Mikey and you watch a cut up of his plays and you're like, that's a good play. That's good position. This is good. That's a nice tackle. But there are more negative plays. And it wasn't just him. It was, Will Harris, who I thought had a really good summer, was having negative plays. Trey Amos was having negative plays. And is that a result of the ecosystem and the environment? I think partially. Again, every player has to take personal accountability and execute the way that is needed to execute. But it just seemed like it was kind of across the board, not where we needed it to be. So can they, again, in the last couple of weeks, show the fan base, show the coaching staff that that these guys are pieces that need to be built around. And I think, again, if the environment's better, maybe there's even some pieces here that we're not talking about, like Jerzon Newton. Maybe he kind of figures it out the back half of the season and starts being more productive, right? And I again, that's why I'm excited for the last half.
Right.
Just some things to keep an eye on.
How do you improve that ecosystem? Is that a talent? Is that structure? And that might be a difficult question to answer but I agree with you. And it could just be, hey, you get the right guys up front who put pressure on. Now the guys in the back feel differently.
Dude, I think that's the $1 million question. And it's something that, I played a lot of football, high school, college, NFL, and it's one of those things that's very tenuous and a little bit lucky, quite honestly. It's like the right kind of guys come together in the right defense with the right voices communicating to them, and you just kind of catch lightning in a bottle. And so, again, I'm not sure all of the changes that Dan was able to accomplish when they were in Madrid, but I've talked to you about this privately. That was a different level of execution that we've seen. And
Correct.
as a result, people played differently. Kenla looked way more productive. Like he had been productive, but looked way more productive. McGee looked incredible.
Yeah.
Fletch was like, that's the best I've seen Bobby and Frankie and McGee play all
Agree.
year.
Agree.
Mikey Sanders still looked great on the edge.
Yep.
Like, so all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, like now we've got something to work with. And so whatever that voice, whatever happened last week, is that the marker of something more? I hope so, because now all of a sudden the optimism around the defense goes from, how we started this conversation to maybe there's more to work with here. Now, to hedge my own analysis here, like they have had points where they've spiked up, they've looked good. The Giants game they look good, the Chargers game they look good, Miami game they look good. Can they be consistent for a little
Right.
bit here? That's the $1 million question.
Right. And I agree. I thought they were much more sound and disciplined, better with their eyes, far more zone, way more zone
Yeah.
than man. And that some of that could be without Amos and Lattimore. It also could have been by design. We'll find that out. But I felt they were some more sound and disciplined. The last thing I want to talk to you about, I know you got to go in a couple minutes. So run game design. And I've had people talk to me about that with, I think when you're missing certain pieces, it's hard to really kind of muster what you want, and it can always look more creative without it. But how do you feel about the run game design? I know there's some of that could be, the pistol versus the under center, and that's been a big topic. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the pistol versus under center thing, I feel like that's getting a lot of. I understand why people talk about it. I think it's easy to it's a very binary metric. It's like, oh, these teams that are under
Right.
center, they're more productive. I kind of think those are somewhat spuriously correlated. And I said this on the Take Command show, like good teams who are under center more because they're running the ball more in second half, right? And you look at the teams that are in that kind of top group, and they're all top flight quarterbacks at the moment, right? I guess the one outlier would be Drake May, but he's playing at a top flight level. And you could say, is that because of the offense or is that because of him? That's a conversation for another day. But when the people in the conversation are Sam Darnold, are Matthew Stafford, are the guy up in Buffalo, all those pieces, Josh Allen, right? Like there's there's a lot of factors here that go into the style of running game. And then people say, oh, well, the teams that are least in the pistol, right? Least under center, excuse me, most in the gun are the teams that are bad. Teams that are bad are playing from behind. They're throwing the ball a lot more. Like, so is it correlated to the style of offense you're running? I don't know. I'd have to do a deeper dive on it. But I guess what I'm saying is like I've actually been relatively impressed with some of the changes that Cliff has brought from a running game standpoint. I liked against the Detroit Lions, they ran a little bit more insert out of
Yep.
13 personnel. They
Like,
ran the counter stuff. They ran true outside zone last week, which they hadn't done a lot of with a fullback lead, like kind of old school
yep.
force. So they have done some stuff that's created some nice wrinkles. I think the personnel is starting to buy in a little bit. And again, some of that's under center, some of that's in the gun. And it's there's no right way. It really comes down, in my opinion, to execution and are you putting the guys in the best position to be successful? Like via formation, via backfield set, are we creating good angles for the offensive line? Are we creating easy targets? And I think, again, in Miami, I thought there were shades of that, right? And there are times and teams that are going to make that harder to do. Like I think about Seattle, just how good that front is. Like you're going to have a tough time with that regardless. But I do think overall there are some very positive things that have come out of the run game. And again, I come from a run game background with Kyle, with Sean, with Mike LaFleur, like Matt LaFleur, all those guys, that is very complicated and very nuanced. And this feels a little bit different from that respect. But I do like some of the principles I'm seeing, and I do like the production that you get from a guy like Chris Rodriguez against Miami.
For sure. And, it's funny because I think it also matters. Are you possessing the ball more? That gives you more chances.
Yes, yes.
For Cliff, you get deeper in the playbook. So I think there's part of that goes along with that. But I also know like with the under center and all that, like if you're in the pistol, you talk to players like, well, it doesn't change a lot if you're in pistol, right? Because you still have, I know some backs may want to get downhill faster, right? So under center might be better for them. Some backs like to read it differently. So it's not always a one size fits all, it seems.
I think that's right. And I think, like Miami, I brought this up on Take Command. I'm going to bring it up here. Like, one of the things that sticks out to me is like they are in the gun a ton, but their play action game is excellent because they pull guards, they change of strength with the tight end, they have unusual backfield sets, they have the quarterback hide the football with like spin and reverse out actions.
Yep.
So, like, you can get to it. I'm not, it just depends on like your offensive philosophy. So to me, I think maybe a broader point would be like, can you marry those running formations more with the formations you're throwing the football out of. Like, can you match them 1-to-1? And I think that's something that I would look to and say, like, maybe that's an area where you could improve in, right? Because you're insulating the run, you're setting up play action a little bit more efficiently, and there have been shades of that. But I know that's not natural for a lot of play callers who aren't in that kind of West Coast tree where everything kind of looks the same.
I liked what Miami did because they also would line up the fullback as kind of like as a wing back, motion to the backfield, and then you kind of screws it up. The linebacker's unsure. Really good stuff. So I appreciate it. Logan, thank you very much. Always appreciate your insight and anything you want to plug. You got about 75 things going on. Anything you want to plug really quick?
Yeah, I mean, make sure you're checking out the Commanders YouTube page. Always appreciate that. Take Command with Grant. And then if you want to listen to the game on the radio, Bram, Fletch, and myself, we do the game broadcast on Big 100. So make sure you check that out.
Awesome. Thanks, Logan.
Thanks, man.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Logan for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back on Friday night/Saturday morning with another one with my 5 thoughts leading into the Commanders game against the Broncos. But most of it, 90% of it's going to focus on just Commander stuff that pertains to the future. So I'll talk to you next time.